Well, what's up, guys? A little bit of everything Southern Homestead. Today we're going to be digging up our green onions here. We're going to be harvesting them. We're going to slice them, put them in the freezer, and then we'll save the bulbs to replant next year in our fall garden. So spring's quickly approaching. It's time to evict these green onions and make room for the spring garden, get some of these weeds out of the garden, and get everything ready for our in-ground planting. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show y'all how we do it, and we're going to get it done. Let's go. All right, guys, so for this process we're going to use organic gardening blade. I've shown this before. It's a little handy tool that I like to use out in the in-ground garden. So as you can see, these green onions, they've grown tremendously. I don't know if you recall, but we've planted one bulb at each location. And what's happening now is that the heat is just too great. The tips are starting to dry out, so it's time to go ahead, remove these plants completely. So bulb, stalk, and the green onions. We'll cut up the green onions, we'll slice them, we'll freeze them for later use, and then I'll show y'all how I save the bulbs so I can replant these very same exact bulbs next year. So all I do, instead of just pulling them, which would then, rip or tear and possibly leave something in the ground, I just go with this blade and I make sure I really get under them. They're not too deep, they may be 2 inches deep, but you can see here I got the entire root system, bulbs and all. So I'll clean it off a little bit, make sure I got everything, and I'll show you one of them up close. So I'm just trying to get them as clean as I can out here in the garden, and I'm gonna put them in this bucket to bring them in the house to finish the process. So there you go. That was one bulb we planted in the fall. We've harvested these green onions 3 or 4 times. I think I have 4 gallons of green onions in the freezer. I'll probably get another 1.5 gallons here, but you can see there they grew substantially. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, possibly 12 or 13 new bulbs to plant next year. I'll never plant that many, so I'll probably just give most of them away. So that's one down. Same thing here. Just put the blade directly under it and then lift. Make sure we get everything up. And then just clean it all off as best as you can. Get most of the dirt out. Some of these stragglers here that are all dried up. And then the reason we're doing that today, like I said, the heat's just too much for these green onions to sustain, and we need to make room for the spring garden. So I still have some garlic that's in the ground. We're gonna leave that probably till, I don't know, June at the latest. But everything around it, I'm gonna weed, I'm gonna till, I'm gonna fertilize, and get it ready for the spring garden here shortly. So just a little note, you want to do this when the soil's dry. It just helps to get it off of the root system better, helps get it a little cleaner, a little less soil loss whenever you bring it inside. I mean, after you kind of fray it a few times, there's not much left on it. So again, that was one bulb, and I probably have 14 or 15 new bulbs that you can see there. So pretty good growth. Like I said, we'll chop them up, save them for cooking in the freezer. All right, so that's one 5-gallon bucket full of green onions and bulbs. Let's take them inside, clean them up. All right, so here we are in the house. Got our 5-gallon bucket. We're just here at the kitchen sink. What we'll do is we'll take a few out at a time. Bring our trash can close. And we're just gonna rinse them off real well here. So it's gonna be a little dirty, a little mess, but not too bad. We could do this. You can do this outside with the hose, but this works just as well. So we're just gonna clean everything off. We'll separate them. You don't have to separate every single one of them. And we'll just rinse them. If you ever wondered where the little spray nozzle was for at your kitchen, there you go. Now you know. Just spray everything off real good, clean it up. Separate all of them. Like I said, each individual bulb you can plant next year into a new plant. All right. That's about, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down. About, 50 more to go. So we'll get this done. We'll catch all this stuff. Put our little screen in there to make sure nothing big goes down the drain. And then we'll put them on the chopping block and get them ready to process them and put them in the freezer. There you go. One bundle, cleaned, ready to go on the chopping block. We'll cut them about here. Keep everything up until the brown edges. Like I said, it's getting a little too hot for these. That's why we went ahead and harvested them today. If we left them any longer, they would all be brown and dried out. They would look kind of like that there. And that's not pretty. That's not edible. It's not pretty. It's nothing good. So let's do the rest of them and then we'll go ahead and get them chopped up. All right, so some of the dirtier ones, I took them back outside, cleaned them up a little better, but essentially we're just gonna lop them off right there, kind of right where the stem meets the green onion. This will be our edible portion right there. And then this will be our plantable portion. So we'll do that. We'll put those to the side. Any brown pieces, we'll just peel them off like such. And I'm just doing a few at a time, a little bit at a time. That way there's not too much on the table at one time. But I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory here. And you can see they all have really good root systems, really good bulbs. This is just some old parts that are just peeling away here, just like a regular onion would. So you can leave it, you can take it off. It's not gonna affect anything whenever you go to store these for planting next season or next year in the fall. So a good sharp knife always helps. This is just a chopping knife that I have here that I use on the Homestead. It's very sharp, works well. Big blade, you can see it coming, no accidents, at least fingers crossed. So I'll finish these up and then we'll dice them up. All right. So this will all be plantable options for next year. I'm gonna set that back in the bowl and this will be what we slice. So we'll look at them, any of them that have any discoloration or any, I like to call it burnt edges. I'll just kind of tear that out. Any of them that are yellow from top to bottom, I'll discard those as well. And then typically what I'll do is I'll take a handful at a time. Make sure all of them are good. That way I know what I have at the end. Square it off like such. Make sure your knife's good and clean. And then get to chopping them. So I like to take my Ziploc, turn it inside out just to make it a little bit easier to get everything in there. Good part about having a big wide blade knife is you can actually use it as a scoop. Try to get all the green onions in there without dropping them all over. Sometimes I'll use a spatula, just kind of depends. I mean, there's really no rhyme or reason. I'm sure there's 100 different ways to do this by better means, more efficient, but I only do this once a year, so it's not really a big deal to me. And I enjoy doing it because I know that we're gonna have some good home cooking with some homegrown green onions right here on the homestead. So once it gets about halfway to 3/4, you can unwrap it or unfold the edges. The bag will hold itself open. A couple little stragglers. And I'll do two things. So I'll get all the air out. As much as possible. All right, like that. All right, so what I'll do is I'll label these, and if I have a bunch, which I do, I'll use these first, and I'll freeze all of them like this. But if I have a bunch that I want to extend the life of, I'll freeze it, let it turn into a solid block. I'll take it out in about a week. I'll use my food saver, and I'll vacuum seal it just to make sure all the air's out. And I've eaten green onions all the way out to a year by doing this method, and they taste just as fresh as the day you picked them. Now, I do have some green onions in a container that I grow year round if I want fresh green onions on something, kind of just as a little topping. But when you're cooking with green onions, the frozen green onions are just as good as fresh. So this is what I like to do. This is how I package them. And then I have the bulbs here, and I'll show you what we do with those. So just while I'm working, I have them sitting in this container with a paper napkin, just trying to get all the moisture off of them. Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna slice them smaller, and then I'll show you how to store them so you can replant them next fall or next year, or whenever you feel like you need to plant your green onions based on your growing zone. So we'll do that here shortly. All right, so we're just out here outside of my house. This is just a piece of landscape fabric. We got all our bulbs here. We got quite a few. I had them in that container with the paper towel, so getting some of that moisture off of them. And then what I'll do, they don't have to be real clean, but you know, we rinsed all of them, so they're fairly clean. So just break them all up into singles or as small as you can get them. Make sure you got roots on each piece that you keep. If the roots break off, just go ahead and throw it away because it ain't gonna do nothing for you. And then what I have here is just an old onion sack that I got from the store when I bought a dozen onions. And I'll stick them all in there. And what I'll do is, for a day or so, it's been pretty warm outside, I'll just leave them hanging outside, let them kind of start to dry up. The area I'm in right now at my house is called a breezeway, so it always has good airflow. And then once that's got a lot of that moisture out, I may even come out with a paper towel and just make sure they're good and dry. You know, just dab them and see. And then I'll stick them in a brown paper bag that's open, and I'll put them in my pantry. Just a cool, dark place that's not, you know, any exposed sunlight, no moisture, real, you know, no humidity, just real dry. So in your home AC removes humidity from the air every time it circulates. That's what you see in your drip pans and all those things. So the home, to me, or inside your home, if you have central AC, is the best place to put them. So cool, dark, dry. That's what you need to know. And like I said, we'll leave them there till next year. And next year we'll go ahead and we'll use some of these same bulbs to plant our next crop. So we'll just separate all these. It'll take a little while. Like I said, I think I had 8 plants that were all from single bulbs. So you can see these things really reproduce. So if you lose a few, it's not a big deal, because next year, you know, you'll double this amount, if not more. Now these with some dirt, I may rinse them a little better. I just don't want to potentiate any kind of growth when I'm trying to store them. And then I'll also come back and I'll probably cut them just because this bag is small, just so I can fit them all in one spot. Just right about where the white starts. See, can y'all see that there? So just right there. So you can see that one, the roots broke off, so it's no good. I'll throw that one away. And then the rule of thumb, I like them to be about as big as my pinky, or I don't keep them. So like that, it may do something, but typically during the off season when they dry out, that'll just go ahead and die completely. So just another little pearl there as you separating these and keeping them. And like I said, the reason you separate them is to make sure that they dry out individually. Gives more surface area for all the moisture to just kind of come off of them as they're drying in that bag. All right, so I'll just hang it like that. Let everything dry out. Come out tomorrow morning, make sure everything's getting dry. Move them around if I need to. And like I said, after a day or so, when they start to really dry out, I'll move them inside, put them in the pantry, cool, dark, and dry.